And then you learn to respond instead of react. And you learn to release instead of complain and bring your vibe down. You learn how to keep things up where they belong. And then you can lead with love. And at the end of the day, that's what life is about. Life is just about pure love. Seems so simple, but yet we all know.
Hello, you are listening to the Late Bloomer Living podcast. I'm Yvonne Marchese, your host, and I'm so happy you're here. I created this podcast to give you inspiration and let you know you're not alone in feeling stuck in midlife. I also invite you to join the Age Agitators Club for women, where we come together monthly to hatch our plans for making waves as we age. Being part of this community for women will remind you on a regular basis that you're not too old, and it's never too late to do that thing you've been thinking about. You can find more information at latebloomerliving.com/community, and I hope to see you there. Hello, my friend. Today is a very special day in Yvonne world, I'm just going to say, for a couple of reasons. It is the 4-year anniversary of this podcast. I'm kind of blowing my own mind saying that. I really can't. I'm kind of speechless. I've been doing this for 4 years. It's crazy. Okay, so the other reason I'm excited is because I have on with me today my dear friend who was also my first ever guest on the podcast. Her name is Donita Wheeler. We have known each other since high school. We played on the golf team together, and she had her own podcast before I did. She is known as Donita Mama Bear, and she had a podcast. And at that point, she was a cancer coach. She had been through cancer a few times, and she was helping other people through their cancer journey. And I saw her doing that podcast, and I was a podcast lover at that point in my life. And it really inspired me to see somebody that I knew so well doing something so incredible with her time. And also, when you see somebody do something, you kind of think, could I do that? Could I do that too? And I have to say, because Donita was doing her own podcast, I think that could be part of the reason this podcast exists. So there you go. So here she is to celebrate my 4 years with me. I am just thrilled to have her here with me. Things have changed incredibly in her life since we last spoke. So this is also a Where Are They Now episode. And she's laughing. I can see her on Zoom trying to be quiet, and she's laughing because that's what we do together. We laugh a lot. So, Donita, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, it's such an honor. I remember sitting in the car in Hollywood, Florida, and it was raining, which it does a lot. I was sitting outside of TJ Maxx, and we were talking about whether you should do a podcast. And I was like, I remember it like it was yesterday. I'm like, yes, ma'am, you should absolutely do a podcast. We definitely have the gift of gab. And it's what a lovely way to share people's thoughts and energy and love. And I'm so proud of you. I love your podcast. They bring so much joy and hope and excitement to people that follow and listen. And I think it's a huge congratulations for 4 years and, staying with it. It can be tedious and like, oh, why do I do this? But at the end of the day, it's so fulfilling,
It is. It's changed my life. I have to say, podcasting changed my life. And that sounds so hyperbolic. That's the word I'm looking for. It sounds so hyperbolic to say that, but it is absolutely true. I have new friends because I started doing this. I did not start a podcast looking to make friends. That was not part of the plan.
Yeah, but that's what happens.
Yeah.
So much. So, I mean, people that I had on my, it's been like, I think 4 years since I've had mine. And they still the lady that did mine, the radio station that did mine still plays them. And I get a little notice every time it comes on my phone. And I'm like, oh, what makes me happy is not
That's
the
so great that it
egotistical
still
part of it.
exists out in the world
Yeah.
and it's still helping people.
Yeah, I think so. I
That's
think
cool.
yeah. And weirdly, all the connections I made on that podcast went forward to what my next move was. And so I really appreciate that that groundwork was not wasted at all. It was
Mm-hmm.
completely and totally what I needed to get me to where I was
Oh, I love
and
that
where
you
I
just
am
said
now.
that. There is not, because nothing is ever wasted.
No.
Like, you know what I mean? Like every
Yes.
experience that we've ever had has brought us here we are right here and now. And everything that we've ever done has contributed to bring us here. And
Yes.
whether we not we consider it a failure or a success, there's something there that is
Growth.
going to be useful to us going
Yes.
forward. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Love that.
It's a very, um, oh, I feel like it falls in line with like nursing and teaching and the things that you give and you're educating and you're creating a safe place for people to be able to go and listen and have their own thought process while they're listening in a safe environment that keeps their energy in a good place, that keeps
Yeah.
their vibrations high. And that's, what a beautiful thing, because you could listen to something that didn't do that, and that would not be cool. So I
Absolutely.
love that yours is inspiring. I was telling a client before I got on with you, I said, I got to go. I get to be on my friend's podcast. We've been friends forever. We used to throw golf clubs together, like we used to eat chips in the clubhouse together, just ditching our golf coach who would walk in the ladies' room and come find us anyway. But, we tried
You're giving
all
away
sorts
all
of
my
shenanigans.
you're giving away all my juvenile delinquent secrets here.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. You can
Eating
delete that
chips.
part.
Yeah, it's so bad. I'm such a bad girl eating chips in the locker room. I'm supposed to
Yeah,
be
we're like, oh
golfing.
God, there's Coach. We're in the bathroom. You can't come in here. It's like, come on, come outside.
Get out and
But
practice.
yeah, yes,
Oh my
we
gosh.
definitely have some years behind us and some good times, and we've been through a lot of things too, like
Yeah.
just life things that bring. Before we got on start recording, we did a catch up, and we were talking about different things that have come forward in our life and why they come forward and how they come forward, and we were kind of talking a little bit about releasing information instead of maybe, I don't feel it like we're complaining. Do you? I feel like we're releasing
No,
information.
especially when you've got somebody who you know is who's got your back. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
sometimes,
it's safe.
for instance, I know John always has my back, and sometimes I just call him to vent. I'm like, I'm just
Yes,
calling to
yes,
bitch. I just need to
yes.
get
I don't
this
need you
off.
to fix it.
Right. Don't need
Yes.
you to fix anything, but I just need to say this. And and sometimes and
Need
you
some
do need to
validation over
release.
here.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some validation too. So you don't swim in it forever.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
Yeah, that's what friendship's for, man. That's what
and yours the
friendship's
best. I
for.
and not to mention the fact that she is my photographer for all of my social media, all of everything. And it's amazing. I get compliments all the time. And I said, I only look this way because she knows me and loves me, but she knows and loves anybody she takes pictures of. And that's what makes them so good. So I don't
Aw.
know if your listeners know that you're an avid photographer and you have that business as well, but you absolutely are a phenomenal photographer. And
Thank
I
you for
cannot
the
thank you
plug, and your
enough.
check is in the mail.
Do I get discounts?
Always.
Yes, I know. Very, very decent one. And so, like it's just nice to have that. And who knew that we would have this ability? Like we were always going to be friends, but when we started doing kind of entrepreneurship and you had your strengths and I had my strengths, we kind of started working together a little bit more. And now I get to see you. She came to take pictures of my granddaughter and my first granddaughter. And the trust level and the trust level that you get is as an entrepreneur really makes things clear as far as like who you can trust and where you're not safe.
Yeah.
And so, I feel like connecting with you is just going home, and it's very safe spot. And I know like when I have chaos in my life, like even if I don't necessarily talk to you immediately, I always can dial into your energy and feel a sense of calmness
You know I'm gonna
immediately.
be your cheerleader in the
Yes,
end, right?
you always
At
are.
least I
Yes. And
hope you know
me
that.
for you. Yes.
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 Yep. I remember being somewhere. Where was it? I remember being somewhere and it was when my dad died. And oh my gosh, so much went on that trip. I ended up with a trip to the ER because I was sick, and you sent me a text out of nowhere
I'm like,
like,
you're not okay. What's going
are
on?
you okay?
Like,
Okay,
something's wrong.
so we need to talk about how you're able to do this and tap into these things. So you had a whole journey away from Mama Bear Cancer Coach
Yes.
to
I
what you are
found,
doing now, and I want to talk about that journey.
yes. I realized the last year that I had my podcast, we were taking care of my mother-in-law. She was dying and she was terminal with cancer. And we were her caregivers. And then I went on to have one more cancer after that. I had the melanoma where they cut off my ear and put it back on. It's all fine and great. I'm good. But it was one of those times where you have oh, I don't, this particular moment was not an aha moment. It was an oh shit moment. And I'm sorry for my cussing,
That's
but
okay.
that's just me. And like it is, I was like, I'm attracting cancer back to me. And then I started to think, I started a company called Mama Bear Cancer Coach where I would coach people and help people through cancer, right? Because I had been through multiple cancers at that point. But I realized when we were taking care of my mother-in-law that I was drawing it back to me energetically. And I was like, that just seems wrong in so many different ways.
What
Like,
made you
how is it that
realize that? Can I ask you that? Like, what made
yeah,
you realize that you were drawing it back to you? And how were you drawing
just
it
kind
back
of
to you?
repetitively continuing to get cancer. So like when I
Right.
started it, I had just had the breast cancer and maybe one ovarian cancer. And then I went on to have another ovarian cancer, some skin cancer, and then melanoma.
But what
So
was drawing it back? Like, what was
just
so you had
energetically, it's energy.
energetically?
So energy, my energy was to be compassionate and loving in a cancer environment. Well, the last part of that being in the cancer environment, I was open energetically. So what's the first thing that happens? That energy comes straight right back to me. And
Mm.
so you have to really, like, I didn't know that. This is when I really discovered the power of energy and what took me to my next kind of steps, but didn't know that. You know what I mean? Like it was happening. I realized, okay, I can't do this company anymore, but I don't know why. So I just accepted failure. And I would joke about it, be like, oh, I was hugely unsuccessful. And that's okay. Like of course, for a while, you're the one that taught me to stop using bad humor on myself. But I forgot what it's called. But you taught
Self-deprecating
me,
humor. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yeah, you told me, you're like, stop. And I was like, okay. But it was kind of a coping technique.
Hmm.
And so I realized, okay, that's off. And then I went into my art for a while. Well, I still do art, but I did mosaics and I realized I was drawn to color and I was drawn to the energy of the glass. Strangely, like I could tell if two glasses didn't go together. Not that their colors didn't go together. I could just tell if they're energetically they didn't go together.
Hmm.
But I didn't know that. Like I didn't know the words for it yet. So I remember during COVID, we talked a lot, and I remember being on the floor. And this is one of my strengths. I see things in pictures. I remember being on the floor, having all my chakra stuff in front of me, and you're like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I've decided I'm going to learn about all the chakras." And you were like, that's cool. What is that? And I was like, it's the energy centers, but I don't really know. I'm going to learn about it. And you're like, cool, cool. And I said, yeah. And I'm going to do, like, I started doing some chakra work around my mosaics. And then I got a couple commission pieces and I worked on those. And they were really energetic in that, like, the person who wanted the picture done was my masseuse. And she was, masseusing me, massaging me. Masseusing is a new word. And so
It's officially a new word. We're going to use
yes,
that
I'm
from now
good.
on.
Donita's dictionary. And so I was realized that I could see what she was saying to me in a picture in my mind. Like I think most people can do that, but I could see like the energy behind it. I could see what needed to come off the glass. I don't know how to explain this, but it's just like I could see what she needed from the picture. Like
Hmm.
I knew why she was commissioning it. She needed to look at that picture and feel a certain way. And
Hmm.
so when I made her piece, I put in that energy, knowing and with intent. And she tells me to this day, every time I look at that, I just feel so calm. And that's exactly it's a picture of a horse rearing up, which would be like the opposite of calm, right? Like, chaos. but she sees nothing but breaking free and forward motion and love.
Yes.
And I had to create that piece of art with that energy in mind.
By the way, I got to see a picture. You sent me a picture of that piece and it was so pretty.
Oh,
And
thank you.
I got that sense of it too, looking at that horse. It was like that breaking free feeling. So,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
so you intentionally were putting this energy into the piece you were creating. And
I was learning about chakras at the same time.
yeah.
So I was kind of, but let's back up a minute. I worked at a yoga studio for a couple of years there for a while, and I really got introduced to yoga and energy and breath and movement and mind, body, soul. And I took those 4 years, like they paid me to be there, and it was the best education that I've ever had. It turned my entire life around. I just didn't know that was the pivotal moment until, like this week.
Isn't it funny how you don't know that until you look back at something and then you go, oh, and all of a sudden you can connect the dots to where you are now. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. And that's exactly what happened. I was just like, oh. And so then I decided, okay, I'm gonna have an art company. I called it Spot. I don't know why, I don't remember. It stood for something. But then, so I have boxes of business cards, like solid 1,000 boxes of like 4 different business cards. Like, oh, okay, but keep on going. It's like I was just throwing darts, hoping to hit something at some point in time. My husband's like, no, you were throwing money out the window. But yes. So, I was trying. And then I moved, we left, my mother-in-law lived in Tennessee. We went back to Florida. We moved to Seattle area. And our whole family moved up here. I took some time, COVID hit. That's when I was doing the art and this is the funniest thing. So I belonged to this networking group, and this lady said, what is your business? And I was like, nah, I'm just kind of working on that. So if you guys will work with me and just let me kind of try stuff out on you, that's what I want to do. She was like, okay, that'll work. Then I decided, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take all my skill sets and put them in one. And I'm going to do like energetic work. I'm going to do energetic, like therapy type. And, so I got up to announce that, and the lady goes, oh, we'd like to welcome our new member, and her name is blah, 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 not me. And she said, and she's our energy worker for the group. And I was like, uh, um,
Really? I didn't know this story.
yeah. So I was like, oh, cool. So I was next, right? And I was like, well, I was announcing that I finally figured it out. You guys have been with me for a year. And I was going to let you know what I have clients. It's actually working. I'm going to do this. And I was going to tell you I was an energy worker. And she was like, well, we can only have one person with one thing. And I was like, okay, I'm out. So it was so
Wow.
weird to me. Like I didn't react. I responded. And we talked ahead of time about maybe like talking about reactions versus responses. And it was just an interesting, like the old me would have been like super competitive and like, wait, hold on, I was here first. This is not fair. What do you mean you just assigned her the person? I've been like literally telling you every month I was going to figure it out. And, I didn't. I said, okay, well, I accept that. And I'm just going to, I'll go to a different networking group. And I did. And that worked out way better for me in the long run. Like I found my group, I found my people. I love my group. It's called Fave. You guys can all get on it. It's a free app. It's girlfriend's favorite things. And it's basically a network for entrepreneurs, and it's a support group, and it's fabulous. But anyway, I wouldn't have ever found that because the lady that spoke after me was the lady who created Fave. And so I was in the right place at the right time. And because I had a controlled response instead of Donita's Scorpio reaction, it served me so well. And I thought, ooh, dude, there's something behind this. Like I need to kind of like sit with this for a minute. And it's, I think traditionally I'm kind of a traditional person. I grew up with a traditional life. I had 2 kids. I stayed at home. I've been married, blah, blah, blah. Like that same traditional situation. So when I started telling my friends that have known me a long time, I'm not speaking to you, I would say like, I do energy work, and they're like, what is that? That's weird. Like, why do you do that? Like, I don't, how do you believe that? Like, it was so much justifying and saying like, no, that I finally was like, you know what? You guys know me as that person. You keep that person in mind. I'm gonna go over here to new people that don't know me as that person. And I'm gonna share my gifts over here.
That's a great point, Donita, because sometimes that's what it takes. Sometimes, we want to, if you're going to grow and if you're going to step outside what has been the you that existed in the past, and you tell the people who have known you and loved you for who you've been all that time, and they see like a change that is like, what? They they want to keep you safe. They want to keep you the
Right.
same because
That's true.
that's the known quantity, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes we do have to find new people who don't know us in that old way in order to step into the new us, in order to be able to expand into that newness that's waiting for us to step into it, you know?
Right.
That is
Yeah.
so cool that you found that for yourself. And too, I think for me, I was watching you go through the process to move into that energy work. The way I see it, when you stopped doing the Mama Bear cancer coach stuff, I saw you go inward first. You paused. You just stopped. And
Hmm.
you had been
That's valid.
going full out. I mean, you did the book, you had a lot going.
Checked all the boxes.
You
Yes.
did. And then you just stopped cold turkey. And I was like, oh, she's just done. And
She's just quit.
but
Yeah.
I saw you go inward with it and start doing the work on yourself and start to explore your art. And that's when you started talking to me more about your that's something that had been there for you all the time that you had been pushing down, which was this access to energy, to being able to read energy, to be able to tap into that for people. And I was like, wow, really? But and it was there, and you had been shoving it away most of your life, if I'm right. You're nodding your
Yes,
head, yes.
absolutely. Yes. Yeah,
And
sorry.
so I
Yeah.
knew that you were doing this work for yourself. And then the next thing I knew, you had started a business around it. I mean, you had done the commissioned artwork, and that was very cool. And I was watching you explore that as a possible way to go. And then, but when you went into energy coaching as energy therapy work for people, all of a sudden, what I saw was boom, she's got all these clients.
Yes, and that happened. That's
And they
true.
kept like referring you off to people, and like,
Yes.
and everything like started to kind of click into place for you in that way. And because you accepted yourself, you
Yes.
accepted,
Amen, sister.
right?
Yes, absolutely. I did. And I stood up to the not intentional, but the bullying from, well, it's like my family, and I don't mean that in a mean way, but what I mean is like, when I stepped out to do something different, that was a different hat. It was not my mom hat, it was not my wife hat, it was not my, yoga manager hat. It was not anything that I had done. Well, I had done it before, but I had hidden my hat. And when I got my hat out and I shook it off and I put it back on my head, I got some interesting responses. I got some, like, I lost a couple of friends, and I just thought, well, you know what? I always say it's not a break up, it's just a break. And, if they're meant to be, they'll come back. But I had to go inward for quite some time to get to that place, to build myself, not to build myself up, but but yes, at the same time, to raise my vibration to a place that was a at that love place, the 432 megahertz, which is the same as the earth, the Schumann resonance. And that's where we feel joy and love and unconditional love. And pure happiness. It's light. It feels light. It feels like a great day on the golf course. You feel good. And I was living in a victimhood. I was very much a victim of all my cancers, of my having to live with my mother-in-law, which we had a strained relationship our whole life. So it wasn't exactly awesome. But it was great to be with her the last year of her life and see her go out with a bang with her child, with her love and things like that, and what you want for everybody, right? So like I've always had a strong compassionate side to me.
But during that time with with your mother-in-law, you guys had some healing moments, right?
So
Like,
many healing moments.
isn't
And that
that incredible?
I think that vibration raising is what was my first like we're in a really terrible situation. We're in a very confined situation. She was neutropenic. We couldn't have any outside germs at all. So we couldn't leave. Like, we had to be there all of the time. We had to boil, lots
That
of
is like
work.
a pressure cooker. And
Yeah,
going
uh-huh.
in and trying to be in that situation with somebody who you've always had a strained relationship with, that's cray cray,
Yeah, it was.
right?
It was it was
That's
a
cray
lot.
cray,
It
but
tried to
you
break
sur
me.
yeah,
Yeah,
but you came
but
out, you're like a phoenix coming out of the ashes,
that's
girl.
right. That's that Scorpio move.
Yeah,
So,
and didn't
like
she thank you in the end for
she
like the
did.
work you
Yeah,
were
she did.
doing?
She
Like,
did.
how amazing is that?
It was
Would you
amazing. It
ever
was
have guessed that that would have happened
no,
10 years
never.
ago?
No. If you had bet me that, I would have said, yeah, that's a solid loss right there. That's never gonna happen.
Yeah.
But it was healing for me, and it was beautiful for me. It was so beautiful for my husband because, they were able to really repair things and do things. And I saw that like I had so many bad, I'm doing air quotes, bad things happen that actually at the end of the day were really glorious because I didn't sit and wallow in the victim. I tried, but my friends called me out repeatedly and said, "You're kind of being a victim right now." Like,
Oh, you know what?
"Rawr."
I'm so glad you went into this zone to talk about this because I just had, I recently had a conversation, a couple of conversations about my recovering complainaholicness. I'm just gonna say that I probably will always be a recovering complainaholic. Um, but seriously, like I lived in a pretty good, solid victimhood, and I can easily go back there, very easily go back to victimhood in my thinking and all that. And in my mid 40s, I was in a job I hated. I was feeling like a failure at that point in my life. I felt like I was stuck in that customer service job with no future. And I was like, I am in my 40s, and what skills do I have to show for it? And where can I go from here? And I'm always going to struggle with money. And this was like the thing, right? I still have money issues, by the way, but I'm working through
Money
them.
block.
Right. And
Yeah.
but so what was happening was I was reinforcing beliefs about myself because with my complaining. And I'd get on a phone with a friend. And I don't remember who I was talking to in the conversation where this happened, but I'm talking to the friend and they're like, "How are you doing?" And I was like bitching and complaining. And I realized that I was like, oh my gosh, I have been so negative on this phone call. Like
I've done that. Mhm.
nonstop negative. And I thought, what a drag I must be to talk to, because I suddenly realized too that this wasn't the only conversation that I'd been negative on. It wasn't a vent call.
Mhm.
It was
And
not
there is
a
a difference.
it was not a venting call. It was a pattern. And
And creating a lot of chaos.
yes, and I realized, that I was like, wow, all this is not good. It's making me feel really bad. And it can't be good for my relationships with the people around me either. Because who wants to be around somebody who's like that all the time?
I
You
will say
know?
one little disclaimer about you though.
What?
I have heard you complain, but I also always hear the last sentence is that ever hopeful things will get better sentence. So you don't complain the whole time. You kind of sandwich it. You do like I'm good, and then what's happening, and then, but it's gonna be okay. So, I would have to just give you a little bit of credit.
Thank you. Well, this is what I did, though. Going back to that time in my life, I decided for Lent that year that instead of giving up chocolate or alcohol or whatever, I was like, I am going to give up complaining for Lent.
That's amazing.
Let me tell you.
Yeah. Challenging.
Yeah, that was crazy hard. And
Yeah.
what it did was point out to me that the problem was much worse than I had realized.
Oh, don't you hate that?
Yes. And I
Oh.
started to beat myself up for that. I would notice I was complaining and I'd be like, oh, I'd get so mad at myself. And then I was complaining about my complaining,
Right. And
right?
being mad about your complaining.
And then just like making it worse, making it worse, making it worse.
Yeah.
I was like,
Well, and energetically, it's just growing into like a big thunderhead.
oh, it was, it was. And then I was like, okay, well, that is not the point here, is it, Yvonne?
It's the
And
opposite of the point. Yeah.
so I really did start to go, okay, so just what would happen if I were to just be aware of the complaint and not judge myself for it and not try to push it away and not try to do anything with it. Just be aware
Give it no energy.
and give it nothing. And
Yep.
and it's got to the point where I was like going, oh, look at that. I complained again. Oh, there's another one. Oh boy, look at that.
Squeak that out.
Look that one again. It got to be funny, right? I started to be kinder to myself. And that when I would notice them with that sort of curiosity, I would say that the complaints started to lose their power over me. And that's when I was able to respond instead of react, which is
Right.
right?
Yeah.
It's
And
incredible what being aware of your thoughts can do for you.
well, and that's how I met the whole response versus reaction thing. I was going in for a float, and the guy at the float
Wait,
place
you
got it.
explain the float. Explain the float.
Oh, a float is it's a uh like
It's
a
cool, by the way.
personal, yeah, it's like a personal little capsule hot tub thing that you get in and you close the lid and it deprives you of light, sound, everything, but you're floating in salt water, like thickness of like the Dead Sea, or I don't know specifically exactly how much, but it's enough for you to float, and it's complete deprivation of all senses. Oh, it's the best thing
So I just
ever.
want to tell you guys that Donita treated me to a salt float when I went out to do her photo session last August, and she was like, "Do you want to do a float?" And I'm like, "A float? What's a
She was
float?"
like, "Oh, I don't know about that."
No, I was in. I was like, "Yeah, I totally want to see what that's all about." And it was really cool. It was really freaking cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so you were doing a float. I
They're the one of
totally.
the things that, like, no, it's okay. It's one of the things that it's the self-care thing, like whatever works. If a massage or float works, if meditation works, if yoga works, if nature works, whatever works. And for me, if I have to, I just don't have enough self whatever the word is, to not do something, like, oh, I'm not going to look at my phone for 15 minutes. And then I don't know if you've ever done that. And all of a sudden your phone goes crazy. You're like, okay, well, maybe in 10 minutes I won't look at it. So you go in there, you don't have a choice. You can't get out with the salt water and start touching your phone. It's gonna be all white with salt by the time you're done. Because I've done that. So, like I love the ability. So anyway, I was in there, and the guy had gotten a new cold plunge in addition to you could go from the hot sauna to the cold plunge in one of the rooms where they used to have a container for the floating, whatever that's called. And so he was saying, yeah, what I love about the plunge is that you put yourself into flight, fright, freeze, or fawn, and you can work on your response. And I was like, wait, hold on, what? And he goes, yeah, like when you intentionally put yourself in this position when you do a cold plunge or cryo or a sauna, it puts you in flight or fright, fawn, or freeze. And so he said, but if you're responding, that is better than reacting. So when you first get into it, you react. You're like, oh my God, I'm cold, I'm cold. Oh, how long much longer? I'm
Your
so
body
cold. I want
starts
this.
to automatically go into the shivers,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
It's a like
It's
a
a human response.
yeah.
So he said, but what I'm training my body to do is respond instead of react. So now when I get in, I take deep breaths for the first 30 seconds, and I'm training my body when it enters that flight to be calm and not react, but respond. And I was like, oh, I feel there's so much goldness in that, goodness, so little nuggets everywhere. And so I've been sharing that with my clients, and I've been sharing that with anybody listen to me, really, that the response is so where we want to be, and that's control of your energy, that's control of, and I don't mean control in like a fake way. I don't mean like you're controlling where somebody can't tell how you feel. What I mean is that your actual human body doesn't react in a way that throws you into that fight or flight. You're trying to train your body to not be where we have so many things that trigger us in today's society. I mean, in all fairness, human life has been triggered like this since the very beginning. I mean, imagine having dinosaurs chasing you. That seems way worse than like somebody stealing your identity.
Right.
So, like I just feel like they've had it since the beginning of time. So if we can learn to really hone in on a response, that brings us back to the point of complaining versus venting versus releasing. Venting and releasing is kind of similar, but you are able to control that response in a way that serves your body, your mind, and your soul, and keeps your vibration in a place that serves you, rather than the reaction is something that's going to bring your vibration down. It's going to put you in the guilt, the fear, the angst, the shame, the things that kind of almost humanly stop your body. So like sicknesses, that's when sicknesses come in, and that's back to the cancer. That's when, if you're having a continued reaction to things instead of a planned response, or as much planned response as you can have, that reaction is going to bring in that chaotic energy. The chaotic energy is going to build like a thunderhead, and that thunderhead is going to be where disease, misfortune, blocks, relationships, that's where things hit a wall and you just don't know what happened. And that's when it's very easy to stay in that victimhood. It's very easy
Oh
because
yeah.
nothing is aligning.
It takes constant if you're a Harry Potter
Constant.
fan, it's constant vigilance with constant
Constant vigilance. Yes, it's
constant vigilance, and it really is like, it is not just because I realized that I had this complaining problem. And I'm going to say I had a great conversation with some friends today in Clubhouse, and we talked about that actually these negative thoughts that we have, and that flight or fright. I can't
well,
or
I did
either
that.
one.
I did that too. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Fight, flight, fear, or fawn.
Yes.
Freeze or
That
fawn.
that's there. It's in us as a human response,
Yeah, we're born with
and
it.
it's there to keep us safe, and
Yeah, it's there to keep you alive.
complaining can actually be a good thing. It can actually be something that is informative, right? Like
Sure.
it could be like, oh,
It smells like
I
gas.
really,
It
yeah.
smells like gas. Really
And
smells
I'm
like gas.
constantly complaining about my job. Oh, look at that. I'm complaining about my job again. But if we can look at the complaint as information
Mm-hmm.
instead of just letting it happen,
Love that. Mm-hmm.
then we have power to go, okay, so I'm complaining about my job over and over and over and over again. Should I leave my job? Or is there something about my job that could change? What can I do to feel less of a victim in this situation? And then you can start making, like, looking for the possibilities of how to make the changes you need to make. And then once you start looking for them, your brain is going to go to work for you to find the solutions, right?
It's
And
called
then,
attraction.
yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
like
Exactly.
magnetic attraction, energy attraction. You attract what
Yeah.
you're thinking. So
Hmm.
somebody told me one time when I was in therapy, I've been in therapy since I was in like third grade. So when I was in therapy, one lady one time told me, she said, if you imagine every time you complain that you skim a pile of dirt and you toss some, pretty soon you're going to be 6 feet under. You can complain with intent, and that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. If
Yeah.
you're intentionally complaining or catching up, catching up sounds a lot like complaining sometimes, depending on your life, like mine.
Depending on how things are going, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, like that kind of thing. But I think the biggest thing that you did was recognize that you were in that loop. That loop, the continual energetic loop that you get into, is what I break on people. So that is what I figured out how to do. I figured out how to stop the loop, the circle that causes the chaos, that causes the thunderhead, that causes the magnetic, more things to come to you, the attraction.
Real quick, I want to go back to before you decided to start doing energetic work with people. Is there a quick story that you can tell where you knew that you had the ability to work with energy or some tie-in to it, and you weren't comfortable sharing it
Yes.
with anybody?
Yes. First of all, I woke up in the morning and I saw my dad in a wreck, and he had a little car, and I just was like, Dad's going to get in a wreck. And so I told my mom. I was maybe 5. I think I was 5, and maybe 5.5. And I said, Mom, Dad's going to have a wreck today. And she was like, Yvonne knows my mom. She was like, that's ridiculous. Don't say those things. That's awful. Blah, blah, blah. Go to school. Shut up. Well, guess what? My dad was in a wreck that night. He broke his leg. All sorts of stuff happened. Like, he had to have a cast. He couldn't, like, the car was, a mess. And then, but I knew, I had seen that. I saw what leg it was. I had saw the whole thing. And my mom was reacted so poorly that I was like, oh, there's something really wrong with me, right? There's something really, really wrong with me. And then little things like that continue to happen. I would know how a friend was going to respond to something. I could tell when somebody had like my friend lived across the street from me. And when we were in kindergarten together, I could tell something was wrong. And I was like, are you okay? Until her grandmother had died. Right. So, like, just these things that but I think if you grow up in a supportive environment where people like accept and understand that, you learn to develop that skill and really get it going. Well, that was not my option. So I didn't want to be weird. I mean, I was already weird, right? I'm tall, can be very outspoken, I'm loud. So I didn't want to draw any more attention to myself, because being tall was enough attention at the time to just be enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
But where I really realized that the energy settles in your body and causes you to do these repetitive patterns is when I was riding the school bus home, and I got on the bus, and the little boy in front of me was older than me, but much smaller than me. And he turned around to me and he said, Donita, you're fat. And I was like, oh, dude, like, I thank you for telling me. Like, I didn't know that. And I wasn't angry with him or upset with him,
Wow.
because he was a 6-year-old little boy who just made an observation, right?
Mm.
But the energy from his words landed in my body. And I accepted at that moment that I was fat. And guess who struggled with weight until I realized I just accepted I was fat. That's not true. And I just
Mm.
dismissed that. I removed that energy from that comment from all of my cells in my body. And I'm not skinny. I'm never going to be skinny, but I'm very comfortable with how I am right now. And I don't feel bad about myself. But just think about all those comments throughout your life that have landed in your body and landed in you, and
Mm.
you've just accepted them. And then you do everything based on those comments that aren't even yours. So, like, that's what, have you ever had like a reaction that you're like, I don't really know where that came from? Like,
Mm.
no
Mm-hmm.
idea why I responded that. That's not what was in my head. That's just what my body did. Right. And you're like, no, for real. Like, I really didn't think that.
Our
That
bodies
is,
are record keepers,
oh,
aren't
yes,
they?
they are. Yes, they
Mm-hmm.
are. And they
Yeah.
keep the record and they respond accordingly. I can see where those comments got dropped in you and started changing everything you did. And we pull it out, we break it, and then you learn to respond instead of react. And you learn to release instead of complain and bring your vibe down. You learn how to keep things up where they belong, and then you can lead with love. And at the end of the day, that's what life is about. Life is just about pure love. Seems so simple, but yet we all know.
It just seems so simple, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah, like sure,
Oh.
I love, but love is very complicated, and we make it complicated.
Yeah. I'm looking at the time and we
Yeah.
have to wrap up, but this has been so awesome talking to you. How can people find you these days?
I have a website, Donita Mama Bear. I'm on, oh gosh, like all of those. I'm on all of it. Twitter. No, I don't know why I even said that. I'm not on Twitter. So let me get that straight. Let me start that again. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. That's what I meant to say. But I have a program, so we remove the energy in your body based on years of your life, and certain spans every 7 years correlate with chakras. I also teach you how to balance your chakras and keep your energy high and keep your vibrations high and things like that.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Donita, thank you for being my friend. Thank you for being a friend.
Oh, I'm not a good singer.
Me neither, clearly.
Yeah, no.
I loved having you back. This feels like the ultimate celebration of my 4 years doing this is to have you back to celebrate with me. Having you as my first ever guest, and here you are to celebrate my 4 years.
And I can't wait till your 8th and your 10th and your 30th, all the places that you go, because your growth has been amazing to watch. And I'm so grateful to just say, I hope your listeners have a buddy that they grow with, because, and if you can't have a buddy grow with Yvonne. That is, we all need a grow buddy. And, you just never know who's going to come back into your life and why. And it's an honor. Thank you. Thank you for letting me be the person that's your anniversary interview.
I love you, my dear.
I love you back.
Well, there you have it. Oh my gosh. Wow. 4 years. I'm still kind of, it doesn't seem real that I could have been doing this for 4 years. Can I just say that? And I'm so glad that I have Donita by my side as my buddy to grow with. I love that she wished that for all of you as well. I hope you have a buddy to grow with. And if you want to find out more about Ms. Donita Wheeler, otherwise known as Donita Mama Bear in all the places, you can find notes about her in the show notes, links to her website, social media, all the things. You can just go to latebloomerliving.com and look for episode 189. Wow. Thank you for listening, especially all the way to the end here. And I hope you have a fantastic week. Stay safe and well, and talk soon.